Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, we are going to start working on one new tutorial. We'll see how we can create audit trails in NestJS. So what we are going to use for database is I'll again using SQL database, since that is something you can definitely change anytime. You just need to change the URL and environment variables. But we are going to use ORM as Prisma. And since this is audit log tutorials, the user login and register is important, since it doesn't make sense if we are not storing the person, the detail of the person who edited or who did the changes. So as you can see the data of this audit log, so as you see, like the action, user ID and the changes, this object is for a product created, so all the values, all the property has new value here. But in case let's say if something gets updated, then we will also see old values. If I scroll down a bit, I'll show you how it looks like for updated. So you will see like how it looks like for updated. So I have updated like update t-shirt from new values, newly updated t-shirts. So now here we are getting both old and new value. If I scroll down away for product deleted, so as you can see, we are getting only old values, since now we just deleted, so these are the old values. All right, so what we are going to do, we are going to start it now. We are just going to take a simple use case of product CRUD operation, and once you understand this, you can definitely implement with any of your project. So I'm gonna create a new application, nest new audit trails app. Okay, now I'm gonna use pnpm and cd Audit Trails app, and then I will open it in the VS Code editor, so that I can be in the project directory instead of the parent folder. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create one environment variable here here in this code editor. So I'm gonna create one environment variable. Now open NestJS documentation. I'm going to go in the documentation, and if I go scroll down a bit, I will find something configuration. Okay, to use configuration in NestJS, what you need is you need to install this. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna copy it, and I'm going to use pnpm I. All right, now that we have configuration, so why I have installed it now is like when we will be initializing Prisma, will automatically add some environment variable here, and that will only work if we have configuration set up. How we can set up our Prisma? So if I go back, scroll down a bit and find recipes, it must be here somewhere. Okay, let's see if it helps us. Okay, the first thing it is saying to do is npx prisma init. So since I'm using I'm using pnpm, so I'll not be using npx. Instead I will be using pnpx and prisma init. We can do these things after initializing Prisma. So generally, like what we do is Prisma generate and then migrate. Okay, so these are the databases we can use first. And if you notice, the Prisma initialized when we run this command, Prisma init, it creates a folder here, schema and Prisma, schema.prisma. Now as you see, the provider is what PostgreSQL, so I'm gonna use SQLite. Okay, all right, so what we can do next is if I go back in environment variable, it has updated the environment variable for Postgres, but I will be using something for Let me just copy and paste it here. SQLite, right? You can definitely update the file path here, but right now if this is a relative path, so it is going to create a file inside the Prisma itself, and that is fine for me. So and later on, like if you want to update the URL and if you want to point out to some MySQL or some SQL Server or MongoDB, you can definitely do that. There will be slight change in the schema of Prisma, but yeah, that is very I mean minor changes, mostly related to the IDs and correlations. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just clear this thing, and now what I can do next, if I go up, so what we need to do here is we need to define the schema. All right, that's fine. Now we'll just define the schema. If I am going if I go in the schema.prisma, I can write here okay, model product, or let's start with the user first. User, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take one ID, and this will be of type string, and I'm just going to give it a type ID. Okay, so its default value will be UUID. You can take auto increment as well, like if I pass auto increment, it should work. I don't know. So whenever you feel like you are not aware of the schema, you should open prisma.io and try to follow the documentation. It's not just like you need to memorize things. So if you click on Prisma ORM, you will go here and find data models, and in models you'll find like we have all the things here on the right side as well. So if you see, we have auto increment. So if I write it this way, auto increment, why this is throwing error, cannot be fields type of string. So if I use integer, then it will work. Now next property, username, and username will be string, and it will be a unique. Okay, and then password will be string. It won't be unique or any, we don't need to put any constraint here. And we are going to add one relations audit. We can put relations like from for one user can have multiple audit logs. So we'll add, I mean, one to many relation here. Let's first define the audit logs table. All right, so here what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna update the table name from user to users. If I don't use this @ map, then it will create a I mean table with this name, so I don't want it. Okay, now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create one table for product. This is not going to take much time. I'm just going to do it quickly. ID @ default auto increment. Again, as I said, if you want to use UID, you can definitely use it, and there if you use auto increment, you will have to use integer. Right now, I'll quickly copy and paste other steps. I don't want to waste my time. Okay, there are two things you should always have while for any table that is created at and updated at. Now what should be the type of it? So the date time will be the type of it, and its default value will be now. What about updated at? So it will be a date time, and default value will be uh, we don't need to write at default, instead we can do updated at. Okay, fine. Why this is throwing error? If you want to make it optional, we can do this here. Let me just format this. And why this is throwing error? The line, this line is not valid field or attribute definition. Now default, what? Date time at rate default now. Okay, now it should work. Okay, so how you will know, like this I need to, this you should use for updated ad. So again, you can go back in documentation and you should scroll down and see if these fields are available. So if you don't find it here in the example, what you can do is you can keep scrolling down a bit, and you'll find something here. If I try to search it, updated ad, then I can find it. So it's very easy, like you don't need to even search here, you can just search it here. If you don't find something, then you should definitely go here and search for it. All right, now what we are going to do, we are going to create audit log table. So model audit log, and for this again I'm just going to copy and paste things from here. I don't know what happened. Yeah, and for action, I'm going to take one column as action, then user, this will refer to this user. As I said, like user will have one to many relations, so one audit log can, many audit log can belong to one user. So if it is one to many, then this is many to one, so it will belong to one user only. All right, and what we can do, this is not just a normal field, it is just a relation. So since this is many, so we keep one foreign key on, like on side of many, where we say like many to one. So the audit log is many, so right now we can keep it user ID here, and this user ID will be integer. Okay, and we can define then relation fields, and here it will be user ID. So I have just one field, and references, so how it is being referred in other table. All right, now I need one more property, string. So we are going to keep all the JSON object of changes here in string format in database, and then when we will be returning back to the client while request, what we can do, we can just parse it and send it back to the client. What we can do next is created at, and created at, as we saw earlier, date and time, and default. So default will be now, so it will be now, and we will not have updated it. So as we cannot update audit log, right, so we cannot update audit log. So this user has multiple audit logs. All right, without wasting much time here on the schema, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna finish this just by defining the table name. The last thing I need to do is products, and then here map, what I can do, audit logs. All right, okay, now what we are going to do is, now we are going to generate a client. So how it works, so initially what happens, like when you define a schema, when you write migration, it automatically generates client for you. But after that, whenever you do some changes in the schema, you will have to manually type, run the command Prisma generate. But for now, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just migrate it. So pnpx Prisma migrate dev name initial schema definitions, or anything if you want. Alright, so now it has successfully migrated, also created one folder for us. And if I open this, I can see SQL queries here, like what tables we have created. Okay, so now if I open this SQL database, we have this users table, we have the products, and we have this audit log tables. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start with authentication. I will create some modules, NestGMO, what we can say, Prisma, and I'm gonna create one module for user, NestGMO auth, and one for product, NestGMO product. Okay, these are the three modules we will be needing. So for authentication, what we need, we are going to need passport. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just quickly go here and scroll down a bit in passport authentication. So I'll be implementing local strategy as well as JWT strategy. For local strategy, just to extract the username and password, and for JWT strategy, I will be using for authorization, just to extract the user details from our payload from the JWT token. To copy it, I can write it manually, but let's do and copy it. pnpm I, and here if you notice, passport.local is npm library. So for this, I will also have to install its type. So let me install this first, and then if I go back, I need to also install types for transport local and pnpm -d. Okay, this is done. And now I will go ahead and install few more libraries, especially for JWT. And here this strategy I will be using, so I'm going to install it right away. pnpm I and NestJS JWT and passport JWT. Also I will need to install its type as tape dependencies. So I'm gonna type types passport JWT. All right, and I will also need bcrypt for encrypting our password, pnpm I bcrypt. Okay, that's all for basic authentication system, I guess. All right, so I'm gonna create one controller, nestg co auth, so it will create one controller in auth module. And okay, I'm going to delete spec file as of now. Okay, fine. And I will also need one service. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create ngs auth. Here I will write no spec. I can zoom it a little bit so that you can see it properly. So now we will be creating one folder here for strategy. Okay, strategy, and one for guard. And then what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create two files here, local.strategy.ts and one for jw2 strategy.ts. I'll come back here and define classes as well, Okay, so what we can do in the auth controller is we need at least two methods, just to create user and just to log in user. So I'm gonna write, I will also need a constructor, so I will define it right away, and then we will later come back here and inject our auth service. Okay, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna write async register, and then I'll make it post request. Also, if this is auth, I'm going to provide it as register, so it will become auth/register as an endpoint. I'm going to extract it from the body, so probably I'll have to create one DTO. I'm gonna quickly create one file, register dto.ts. These are the two things we'll be using. I'm gonna install this right away. pnpmi class validator. What next? So we are going to finish up our register method. So here what we need to do is return this dot auth service that we are going to define in few minutes. Create user is fine, and I'll pass this user. Let's import this register DTO. I created with register request DTO. That's fine. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna inject my service. So this will be private read only and auth service, and its type will be auth service. I'm going to import this, and this create user. Okay, so I will quickly go here in create user, and what I can do here is I can create one method create user, and this will be async, and I'm going to pass user, and this will be register use request DTO and console log user registered. Okay, now I'll need one more thing here for login, so I'm going to quickly define the method async login, and this will be the post as well, and here I'm just going to give endpoint as login. What will happen in register, we will passing the username password. In login, what will happen is like we will take the details, so our guard will do the job for us. So now you can understand it like when we will implement the guard here, that will extract the token, I mean the details from the token, and save it in request.user. So to get the request object, we need to use annotation request. And once so when we are trying to hit this endpoint, our validation process will be done by JWT strategy only. So we and this auth guard which we are going to create, and when this will reach to this line, it is confirmed that the user is valid, and then we are going to create access token actually. So what we are going to do is we are going to create a method for generate access token, and here we can pass request.user. Okay, and now in auth service we can create one more method here, generate access token, and this we can keep it as async. We can define here const access token this JWT. So we'll need JWT service share. So what we can do, okay, so what we can do, so we'll have to import module JWT. So since we are going to inject JWT service in our auth service, we need to import JWT module. So here we have JWT module. Now we can use its service, but if I go here in the JWT module, you will find it has two methods, register and register async. So actually we will have to pass some configuration here, then we can register it. So even if I go back in the documentation, if you will go back in JWT functionality, if you scroll down a bit, you will find this is the way we can register in synchronous way. And if you want to use async, where we want to use factory and other stuffs, then we can use register what we can say, register async. So in our case, since we are using a config service, what we are going to do, we are going to use actually register async. So we will be using register async, and now this will accept one object. And if you are not familiar like what properties it will accept, then if you go here and if you click on JWT module async options, you'll find these things. Okay, so what are the mandatory properties here? So probably we can define use factory and inject. These things are important. If we are injecting some services in a use factory, then we'll have to use inject. Okay, so let's do that quickly. And now what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna use factory directly, and this will be a method. And here in this method, what I can do, where I can return one object. Let me just change this a bit, and now I can just return one object, secret, and this secret will be what. So here we are going to need a config service which we have installed, but we haven't initialized config service for root as well. We are trying to import it, but do you think it will work here? This module doesn't have a config service. Even if we import here, like to make this work, we can import config service here, I mean the config module, but since if you go in config module, you will find there are two ways to define, for root, for feature. In this tutorial we are not going to use for feature, since we can define custom you can say custom configuration. We can provide a namespace of any configuration and we can pass it here. You can watch this in my different tutorials, so there is a separate tutorial for that. And so before we actually import this anywhere like this, just with the name this way, we first need to import it as a root. So the best place to do that is in root module. So what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna keep all the modules in a new line. Okay, now I'm going to import config module here, and what I can do next, I can just put for root. I will not provide any options here. You can go and check what are the options available. These are the very straightforward properties you will find here. And okay, like is global, env file path, but by default it will read environment variables from env path and put it in the config service. So we can use config service and call get method with the name of environment variable. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put some environment variables specific to JWT, and then we can use that. So here definitely we would like to have something different from this, that no one knows, and we don't keep it here. We will also pass it dynamically when we deploy our application. Okay, you might be aware about all these things, so I'm just going to go in coding again. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use config service dot get. Here in get, what its output is a string, so I'll have to use string. Then in property, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna pass this name. What happened? Okay, and okay, so we are doing it in auth module, right? Okay, since we have already configured the config module, now if we import config module directly with the name, it will acquire the same instance of config service. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add one more property here that I have already added. If I show you an environment variable, so we are going to need JWT expiration 1 hour. I'll keep it 2 hour for now, and then I will go back in auth module, and since I have kept it config service, I can also keep the first one as get or throw. So whenever there is some error, like if it is not able to find, then it will throw an error, since it is mandatory, right? So we'll be needing it. And to make this config service available, what we first did, we first imported it in the JWT module. Now since it is dependent on config module, and why it is dependent, since we want to use config service, and how we can use config service. If we are trying to use config service, then we'll have to pass it as a first parameter here, and to pass it as a parameter, we'll have to inject config service here. All right, I think that's it. We are seeing some error here, not sure what. Okay, so for now I will be writing it as user any, and what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna quickly run my application to see like if we are facing some error. If it says 0, then that's fine. Okay, we are facing some error. Register did found one error. Okay, it's not a module. It's saying it's not a module. Did we save it? I don't think so. Yeah, now found 0 errors, but it's saying configuration tree doesn't exist. Okay, let's debug this. Okay, so it's giving error probably because we haven't saved app.module.ts. Let me save it and then try if this is still giving an error. Nope. So it's now working. So we should always save our files, right? Sometimes like when we type a lot of code in different files, we forget to save it. Alright, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna close all tabs. I don't want to have so many tabs, so that's why I just closed all of them. Now what I'm gonna do, okay, so what I'm gonna do, in auth module I will also need passport module. Okay, that's fine. We are going to set up our Prisma. Okay, so in module, what we are going to do, let me just create a couple of services here. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create one service, Prisma, NestJS Prisma service. Sometimes I do typo, that's why I was checking whether I have written it Primsa or Prisma. I most of the time, like while typing quickly, I type S first, then I type I second. So that happens sometimes. So yeah, I forgot to remove spec. That's okay. Alright, I'm gonna need one more service here in Prisma, but let's do one thing. It is going to have a complex structure in module, since I'm going to make this module a dynamic module. So what I'm thinking, like first let's define the Prisma of service first. So it should extend from Prisma client. Okay, now uh, it will also have to implement it from on module init. So this is a life cycle hooks that we can use. So when this module gets initiated, then we can trigger some code. So after the module initialization, what we are going to do, we are going to use this dot dollar connect, and this must be an async. So we'll have to put void. Why we are going to make this module as dynamic module, the reason behind that is, what I'm thinking is like, I'll have to take the model name of audit log. It's better to like keep it global so that it will be in the global dependency container, right? Now instead of defining things here, I'm going to remove it. What I'm going to do, I'm going to just keep it empty object, and then what I can do, I can just create two static method. So while using some dynamic module might have noticed, we use this way Prisma module dot for root or for root async, these two things. So we are going to do similar stuff. So we are going to create one method for root, and how so, and one more thing, static for root async for someone who want to use async version of it. Generally in for root, what will happen is like someone will pass some object, and this object, maybe let's say can be any properties. For now I just wanted to get table name. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create one type, export type Prisma and module options. So, and here what I can do, audit log model name. Okay, so this will be a string. In later point of time, if we have some other configuration, we can definitely come back here and put it here, and we can utilize it in our application. So I'm going to define options type as Prisma module options. Alright, so generally in for root, to make one module dynamic module, so this would be a dynamic module, and I need to return it from the class. Like we are going to create as we have created a static method, and now we need to return the same configuration as we define here. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna return it module. So if I go back in dynamic module, you will see it has module. So let me show you what are the other parameters, what are the other things like imports, controllers, provider. So these are the same things which we use in module, right? Just one new thing we need to do is module. So we'll have to copy this Prisma module and put the class here, and then what we can do, okay, so okay, we can put providers, and we'll have one exports. I'm going to create one token for this option, so we can inject this option in any services here or anywhere. But generally this options will be required here inside this Prisma module. Even though we are creating a singleton instance of it, will not be exporting it, since this won't be helpful in other, you can say, other modules. So how we can write custom provider. I've already created one tutorial for this, so if you want to watch, you can explore my channel and you'll find some video there. Okay, so and in provide, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna write one token, and then here in use value, what I can do, I can just define options. Whenever we'll request for this, we'll get this option. Instead of option, we can keep it options. All right, now I can also add Prisma service in provider. In export, I'd like to export this Prisma service. Okay, similar things we can do in for root async, but it will have slightly different parameters. So let's say if these are options, so I can create a module name here, I mean the type name here, like Prisma module options async, and let me define a type here, export type. Generally for the type, what we can have, we generally pass imports. Like if I show you one example, we defined the JWT module register async, and if you noticed, we passed imports and we passed use factory, and we also pass inject. So these are the three things which we will be needing in most of the async dynamic module. All right, so here let's do one thing, any, and the second one will be use factory. So this is going to be a method. So how I can define this way, and then I will be taking one inject array. This will be any. We'll later come and modify if we see some error, and I'll have to return one object, and this we are going to have module. So module will be the class name itself, Prisma module. Let me just drag it a little bit so that you can see the bigger screen. And now we'll have provider. Let's have import first. Imports. What we can do, we can write options dot imports, and then in providers, what we can do, we can create a custom provider. We'll write provide one Prisma module options. It should be in string. You can also make this a constant as well. Okay, so when people will use factory, so we cannot define it here. It will allow user to pass use factory. So we have already defined it in options. So what I'm gonna do, options dot use factory, and when people will use factory, they will have to pass parameters. So we will have to use options dot inject. And the last thing is exports. We don't need to ask user what they want to export. It's up to us, like what we want to export. So we are going to export our Prisma service. Okay, so what we are going to do next is we'll also need one more service from Prisma. So this will be the service which directly extend from Prisma client, but we are going to create an extension of Prisma service which will allow us to create hook. So after some version, if I go back in Prisma, let me just scroll down a bit. If I go in extensions, if I go in hooks middlewares, if you will notice, this $use is deprecated, so we can do the same thing with we could have created audit log functionality with this thing as well, but this is deprecated. So what we are going to do next, we'll follow the same thing with extensions. So here in extensions we'll be using query. So it is written, you can use Prisma client extensions query component to create independent clients. So we can create independent clients, and this provides an alternative to middleware. You can bind one client to a specific filter or user. So for each user we can use this middleware. It will work like a middleware. So we can use extends and configure the extents, and we can return something from there, and that we can use it as a client, Prisma client. Okay, instead of using the Prisma client instance, we are going to use the output of $extend. Okay, I will explain, like when we will be writing this, we will see in details like how it works. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna create one more service. What I need to do, I need to add it as a path, Prisma slash. If I run this query, it will again create a folder inside this Prisma folder. So what I need to do, I need to just pass flat. What we are going to do here is we'll come back later and define most of the stuff. For now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to extend it with Prisma client so that it will have all the methods which we have on Prisma client. Okay, next I'll need two things here. So the first one is this Prisma service, and the second thing, I will come back here and define rest of the steps. For now, just do one thing called super. Okay, now what I want to do here, I want to import the Prisma, and what we need to do here is we need to use for root. Later we can take it from the config, but for now, like, I just want to use for root. And what are the parameters here? So these things, audit log model name. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just define this will be audit logs. Okay, fine, let me verify this. This is audit log. So why I am writing first letter as small? Because generally the model gets converted to camel cache in Prisma client. So that's why I'm using first letter as small. Alright, now as this thing is imported in root module and it is a global, so we will not have to import it again and again. Instead, what we are going to do, we are going to write one local strategy in authentication. So I'm going to quickly write export class local strategy. Let me just keep it a little bit down, strategy, and this should extend from passport strategy, and we'll also have to import strategy from local. Just don't do mistake and import it from passport JWT. We'll create separate strategy for the JWT. For now, in this file we need to import strategy from the passport. So here in constructor, what we can do, whatever thing we want to inject, we can do that. But apart from this, if we call super, if we call constructor of parent class, we can pass some options here as well, like username, username field. Here in this example also, like it is showing username field, and it also has password field. They have all the documentation, so you can go through it if you want to configure in detail or in advanced configuration. If you needed to do in advanced configuration, you can definitely come back in passport website and search for it. Right now I don't need to change it, since my username is, luckily my username field is, I think, username, and password field is password. Okay, I did a mistake. Now since I have updated my schema, what I will have to do is I'll have to generate Prisma again. So pnpx Prisma generate, and I'll have to migrate as well. Prisma pnpx Prisma migrate hyphen dev name corrected, what was that, password failed. Okay, all right, now the update is done. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna finish up my local strategy. So in every strategy there is a method called validate, which will execute to validate the user. So if you are able to validate the user, you will return the user object, which will be attached to request. Now here in local strategy, what will happen, the first parameter will be user name and the second parameter will be password. All right, and then what I'm gonna do here is actually I'll have to call one method so that I can validate the user details from the database, right? So to do that, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna inject this service in local strategy. Private read only auth service, right? Show auth service. Now in validate, what we can do, we can say, like, we can call a method of auth service. Let's say this dot auth service dot validate user, right? If I go back in auth service, we haven't created here, but we can create one method here, validate user, and this can be we can pass user here and we can validate, or we can pass username password directly. So this will be a string, password will be string, and we can validate. For now, like, let me just return true. Okay, ideally I'm going to return one. If I'm using validate user for this strategy, I will need user here. So I will return user after the successful validation, otherwise I will return null. So here what I can do, I can just add one check. If not user, I can throw one exception, throw new unauthorized exception, and otherwise I can just return user, and this user will be attached to request. So similar thing happens in JW2 as well, but here in validate we've also passed some configuration in super, like the secrets and all. for JWT extraction from the auth token, and invalidate, it will get one payload. From payload we will extract things, and we'll then return the user.